Welcome, cannabis friends. Hope you are doing awesome. We have an amazing guest on the line today, Mr. James Brinkerhoff. James has been a devoted advocate of permaculture, organic gardening, and food and medicinal plant cultivation for over 3 decades. His journey began when he made the decision to live off-grid and study natural systems in Northern California and the Pacific Northwest. It was during that time in Northern California that he took the permaculture design course with founder Bill Mollison. When he became a father, he moved closer to modern amenities and witnessed the harmful effects of chemical lawn care, fertilizers, and pesticides on the children in his community. This experience inspired him to explore the connection between soil and human health. After years of research and observation, James has concluded that some of the healthiest people in the world were those living on the most fertile soils. In 2018, James was given the opportunity to build one of the world's largest regenerative cannabis operations, Edun.co. This is where he developed his Beyond Organic Sustainable Soil, acronym BOSS system, to create a safe and healthy environment for the cultivation of medical cannabis. The BOSS system is designed to nurture biodiversity and health. James has dedicated his life to helping households produce healthy soil and achieve food sovereignty, using his knowledge and expertise to create clean, organic living soil and revive our country's declining soil health. Welcome to the show, James.
Thanks, Al. It's great to see you.
Right on. Awesome.
Say, what a nice introduction. Thank you.
Cool. Very nice. And yeah, it's such an amazing things that you're doing. I see you online and the things you're doing, with the soil, and how you grow cannabis and other things as well, let's talk a little bit about how you did get started.
How I got started?
Yeah.
Well, I got started many moons ago. Actually, it was I got into, as a teenager, I started getting into going to live music, concerts and stuff. And from there, I kind of got into cannabis a little bit, started dabbling with cannabis as a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of led me down this path where I ended up in Northern California, kind of looking to gain more knowledge in the cannabis industry. And that kind of led me into organic gardening and permaculture. That's kind of fell in my lap right there when I was 18, 19. Mm-hmm. And I met the kind of originator of permaculture, took the design course with him. And I happened to take the design course in Northern California with a lot of cannabis growers there and people that were using organics and permaculture design to grow mass cannabis. And so I kind of grew up in the cannabis industry from the 90s in Humboldt in Northern California. But at the same time, really into permaculture and organic gardening and other medicinal herbs. Cannabis was obviously the most lucrative crop to grow, but really just with a passion in medicinal herbs, natural kind of living, natural lifestyle, and permaculture design. And yeah, so that's kind of really where I got started many, many moons ago, and all the way up until, Colorado legalized cannabis, and I moved back to Colorado from being in California 16 years and started one of the first dispensaries and worked a lot along the supply chain in the early years of the cannabis industry. Different parts of the supply chain had different licenses for dispensaries, manufacturing, cultivation, up until most recently, where I built it's about 60,000 square foot, 4-season greenhouse in Western Colorado. It's up at 6,000 feet elevation up in the high desert. And it's all focused on regenerative, organic, or beyond organic cultivation with a focus in Korean natural farming, probiotic bokashi, fermented compost, and natural insect prevention. We use a lot of essential oils and different plants that kind of repel insects. We use minerals, sulfur, different things like that. That's all natural. And it was really like kind of my concept after 20 years of being in cannabis and kind of being in permaculture and organic gardening. I really wanted to do something special for the cannabis industry and try to create a sustainable product that not only was a real high quality, from in my terms, like high terpene content, flavonoid content, esters, all the things that you'd like to see in a full spectrum cannabis product, but also kind of cheaper to grow, and also healthy to be around. And what I started to notice as cannabis was legalized, these big industrial grows were pretty toxic. And walking around these warehouses is almost, you could just feel uncomfortable in your body. You just knew, it's a lot of chemicals, a lot of salt fertilizer, a lot of pesticides. And so I started to see that, and I was like, wow, they're calling this medical cannabis, but the places that they're growing it in look really unhealthy. And I always knew, like, the medical cannabis from Northern California, being up in the mountains and the sun, grown in the sunshine, and having this real natural vibe around where the cannabis was growing. It was a big difference to moving to Colorado and kind of seeing it all in these big warehouses in the downtown industrial district.
Mm-hmm.
So I really wanted to do something that I could bring, like, everything that I learned growing up in the cannabis industry from Northern California, kind of learning from these older hippies that are kind of were the pioneers from the back in the 60s and 70s. Those guys were my teachers. So I wanted to take that whole vibe and they were back to the landers too. I mean, they all had organic gardens and they're all living off the land. And I wanted to kind of take that spirit and put it into a cannabis brand that could be built up, and then actually, maybe it could touch other brands, and it could take it around the world and show people that cannabis and all other medicines, herbal medicines, and food can be grown with this really cool kind of soil and activated compost and biological fermentation. It's kind of methods that I learned from Korean natural farming, organic gardening. So it's pretty exciting. You can go to the website at edun.co, and now we kind of focus on mostly growing for the resin. So we take all the resin and make it into products, vape carts, smokable hashish, rosin infused pre-rolls, and the extraction is all done with water and heat. So there's no solvents. Water is the only solvent. So it's kind of like a real natural type of experience that you'll get with cannabis grown in a real natural way.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. Yeah, and it's amazing, like, what you are doing with the soil and with the grow. It's like you said, it's beyond organic. That KNF, the Korean natural farming, is super interesting. But you've even taken it beyond that, really, with your what is the beyond organic sustainable soil kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Just incorporated all kinds of different things that you've learned from basically your whole life, right?
Yeah.
It's
And then
amazing.
when we started the cannabis company, I brought in some real experts in Korean natural farming, and brought some real experts in to help me kind of devise this. And we just, after 2 or 3 years, we really figured it out. It was kind of a mixture of few different things that really brought out the best results for us. So right now I'm calling it the Beyond Organic Soil System, BOSS. It's a kind of a no-till, top dressing type of growing. You're not tilling, you're building the food soil web and the mycelium, and you have a lot of fungus and bacteria. And so you add to the top. It's like a lasagna layering. You continue to mulch and just keep adding to the soil, and then naturally worms come up and digest it all. And it's kind of these layers of decomposing. And as you dig down, you can just see it, and it turns into pure worm castings. So yeah, it's and it's really fun to do, and it's a little bit labor intensive, but it's kind of like different than the normal, like, wasting all this soil, shoveling it all out, or digging it in. When you till in and you just disrupt the whole soil food structure, you're disrupting all the life in the soil.
Mm-hmm.
And usually what happens, it goes really heavily bacterial. Everything kind of goes bacterial when you expose it to all the oxygen, and you kind of collapse the structure of the soil. So we're building like a fungal dominant complex, and we have a lot of mushrooms popping out of it, and we feed it wood chips, and we feed it, fermented compost. So it's pretty neat. And kind of what happens is everything's just kind of working together in there with these mycelial networks, these mushroom networks underneath the soil, and they have this connection with the roots of these plants. And they're instead of just dumping, the traditional, like, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium fertilizer, these plants, they eat what they want when they want, and they have signals that they send out, right? And then they take up those nutrients as they're needed. And so as long as you're adding a real diverse kind of input, that it'll just eat what it wants when it wants, and you're not, just kind of running off this salt mineral, like giving it nitrogen. And it's almost like, to try to explain to, like, in layman terms, it's like taking a lot of steroids and hormones and pumping. It's kind of what industrial farming has done. They have GMOs, right? Genetically modified. Well, they're trying to pump it up so that they get a higher yield, because they charge price per pound. So a lot of what they do is they'll modify for color and for size. And same way, they're feeding it, these salts that are like a straight chelated mineral, and it doesn't give kind of the plant the full, its full opportunity to achieve health. And so while it looks good on the outside, sometimes you'll notice if you're in a supermarket, these giant, huge hydroponic tomatoes, but when you cut into and eat it, there's not really any flavor. So they've done really well at kind of modifying for looks and weight, but they really can't replicate what the soil food web does. So it's pretty fun stuff. And again, like I'm just, after 30 years, I'm still a beginner. I'm still trying to get around people smarter than me. And, some of my teachers and mentors, they talk about biologists, they know about this much when it comes to like, if they dig up 1 inch of soil, there's so much biology and so much going on that even after thousands of years of looking at this stuff and then hundreds of years under a microscope, a couple hundred years or whatever, they still know we still know very little. So, so kind of my take on this, Al, is that mine is more of a spiritual and philosophy, where I'm just trying to partner with nature and connect in with like what works. And, some of these techniques like Korean natural farming, this was come up with from a lot of like observation over the years and years in Japan and Korea, different places in Asia. And so it's really working with nature and the biology that's there. And a lot of what I do is I take regular, plants that I find out in the wild, and I extract and ferment them and use it on the plants that I'm growing, food or cannabis, in the soil. I feed the soil with those depending on what they're good for. Like in Colorado, I was using a lot of watercress. It's a really fast growing plant that grows in the waterways. And by fast growing, you can extract those kind of growth hormones naturally. And so, I would use that in an extract and spray all my cannabis, I was growing greens and brassicas, broccoli and cabbage and stuff. And all of a sudden you see this vibrant, healthy growth. So I'm doing that naturally. It also cuts cost, right? And creates this self-resilience where I don't have to rely on a big corporate fertilizer company. And I can get these things like from what grows right around me, right? So you can cut your cost down in half, in organic farming with some of this ultra low cost organic style. You wildcraft some of your inputs from stuff growing along the waterways. One of our inputs is seawater. There's 82, 72, 82 minerals in the ocean water. So you real diluted seawater, we spray on the crops. And yeah, we use different fruits and vegetables. We'll ferment them down and make compost out of them. And it's just super rich, and put it on our plants. So, and it's fun too. It's like fun doing all that. So yeah, it's just a little bit different, it's a little bit different. And I'm kind of teaching self-resilience and terroir, and learning like, what are the soils? How is the food going to taste in your area and your soil? Kind of similar to how these wines are in different regions. In different regions of France, they have the Champagne and the, and the Bordeaux, and it's all, the taste from the place. It's like the taste of their soil, of their climate, of all that. So when I go into a place like, now I'm in Florida right now doing a couple consults and helping people with organic edible landscaping and an organic farm, and it's going to taste differently. I'm building their inputs for here, right? I'll go out into the national forest, and I'll go like to the oldest forest, and I'll pull out just like a little bit of the mycelium from the old growth forest, the leaf mold and the leaf duff. And I'll bring that back to the farm and feed it starch and sugar and let it grow really big. And then I'll turn that into a tea and spray it all over the property. So I'm growing the ancient mycelium and microbes that are from our ancient forests and bringing it back to places that have been killed and destroyed by chemical spray, and setting them loose again and getting them to grow again. And that's one of the inputs that we make for the microbes and the and we do a lot of biology. When you keep with biology, you don't have to give it so much nutrients, and the biology increases the nutrient uptake and the absorption. So
That's
it's
awesome.
a real biological system. I use a lot of microbes, from leaf mold and the mycelium growing in the forest. And then we'll use fermented compost. We'll take vegetable scraps and vegetable waste. I'll take waste from like the breweries, their fermented grains and stuff. I'll make the compost with that, and the soil and vegetables and cannabis loves it. So Yeah, I like to use just like waste streams. So I use people's waste to create something that's really valuable.
Right on. That's awesome. So speaking of the soil and regenerating the soil, you know how they're saying like a lot of the organic farms, they were using the bile sludge, and so they're saying that it has like some chemical in there, and now they're saying that all these organic farms that used that bile sludge, which was supposed to be organic, um, now are contaminated, and they because that chemical is in the soil now, and they can't be used for like 30 years or something like that. They're trying to say. But do you think that using your techniques, they could regenerate the soil like much quicker, right?
They can regenerate it probably in a couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, if you
So
look at what they did in Chernobyl with hemp, the hemp bioremediated all that radiation and stuff in Russia. So like with hemp and then like, fungal compost, the mushrooms can do it. It can eat the heavy metals.
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like it does a lot of scare tactics and just ways to devise to try to take out organic farming this period, right?
Well, I think that at this point we need to come up with something that's different than organic certified USDA organic.
Yeah.
I mean, we're finding out what their processes are, and I'm talking to some of my friends who raise livestock, and they absolutely sterilize the food. They call it organic, but they sterilize it, whether they dip it in bleach or they irradiate it. It's part of the USDA process. So we're at a place now where we need to start looking at like local pasture raised animals and food crops. Like you don't really USDA organic. I'm starting to move away from that.
Yes.
I just think that it's pretty much the same as conventional now. And they
Yeah.
just maybe they use the pesticides are a little bit less toxic. But
Yeah. They
other than that,
bastardized it.
it's like you said, they started using biosludge for fertilizer, to cut costs or whatever. And then also, like I said, to get the certification. Like I know in Colorado, it's illegal to sell chickens to retail unless you go through USDA certification. And USDA processes they dip those chickens in sodium chloride. So
Yeah.
you
It's
kill.
crazy.
So that's why. And then we're wondering why like we're having gut problems in our gut. You know what I mean? When we could have this like biologically rich pasture raised meat that would be interact with our gut health and our biome. But what's happening is we're eating these foods that are either dipped in bleach or they're sterilized somehow, and then we eat that, and then it's killing our gut. We're having to eat all these probiotics to kind of keep up with all the So we're
Yeah.
artificially eating probiotics. We would naturally get those, and that's basically what I'm making from the mycelium. I'm making this probiotic.
Yeah. That's
That
amazing.
yeah. So anyway, that's kind of what we've been calling it beyond organic because it's like way better than organic. And organic lets you do pretty much whatever you want nowadays.
Yeah. It's crazy. They bastardized it so much from basically since like the late 90s, the early 2000s, they started bastardizing organic. It's crazy. And then, like you were saying with the chickens and stuff over in California, my buddy, he's a 40-year grass-fed or organic cattle rancher, right? And he's he has a degree from Cal Poly, all that, and like they're just 100% grass-fed, and he would get they have a slaughterhouse at the Cal Poly Pomona, and on the campus, and that's what he would use, and about I'd say 8 to 10 years ago, he called me up and say, "Hey, do you know any slaughterhouses or any farms that have slaughterhouses on their property?" Because the FDA put out mandates saying that no slaughterhouses can have a grass-fed cow. It has to be at least 6 months grain-fed before it goes into the slaughterhouse, or else they'll take away their licensing of the slaughterhouse, right? So he was stuck for a long time, not being able to live, work and stuff like that. It's amazing what they do to try to just take it out.
Yeah, they don't want us to have freedom, really. I mean, they say they do, but when you start to think about what they're doing to our food supply chain and how they're cutting off the small producer and all these small, to try to make these huge industrialized and doesn't look like they want us to take care of ourselves, grow our own food, raise our own livestock. They want us to be dependent on their seeds, on what to grow, on their pesticide, on their fertilizer. And it's unfortunate because this originally was the Garden of Eden. I mean, everything
Yeah.
that we need to survive was gifted to us here. It's all growing here, right here. And they want to sterilize it, and they want to, sterilize it and put it in a box and kill everything that bothers them. And everything kind of works together. And that's kind of what we do in these cultivation systems. We try to mimic nature. What's going on in nature? How do we bring back balance again? And,
Yes.
they're killing these bumblebees, and these bumblebees are what pollinates everything for us to eat and get fruit and all these things. If they do that, we're going to have some serious problems with our food supply. And, you can go down a big rabbit hole about, all that stuff, but you were kind of trying to fight the good fight, educate people to take care of themselves and not be so reliant on, the mass media and some of these big structures that have been put in place for industrialization. We need to start being more self-reliant in different sections, different local regions and bioregions for our own food supplies and our own energy. We need to have that self-reliance again. So
Yes.
it's kind of part of what we're doing now.
Right on. Yes, definitely. I like to say, like, grow what you can and then develop relationships with local farmers, for all of that. So with Eden, and when you're growing the cannabis, you mixed in different plants with there as well, right?
Yeah.
And so that's part of the boss system. And
Yeah. I mean, we have and it's part of permaculture as well. But yeah, we grow, ground covers on top of the soil. Some of them are, can create a nitrogen source. Others just help build that structure of soil and also communicate in that food soil web, right? They feed and they feed off, and they also host beneficial bugs, beneficial wasps that might eat aphids, and just really create, we try to create diversity, right? So by creating diversity, they can create more of a chance of better plant health and less things going wrong.
that's awesome. Yeah, because I had a buddy that he has a organic farm in California, and he does it pretty much right, as right as he can. And but he does like it with his strawberry fields. He'll put like a Maui onion like every 3 feet, like to just sort of like natural, pest repellent kind of thing, like
Yeah.
undesirable pest repellent, and tries to have like the stuff. So and
Yeah, we do
everything
that
that
too.
you
We did
do is
like a lot
pretty
of
much
basil.
on your farm, right?
What's that?
Like all the inputs and everything are pretty much from your farm or gathered by you, basically, right?
Yeah, in the local valleys in the area, like there's actually a lot of farms out on the western slope of Colorado. So we'll go hit up the orchards, and like I said, we'll hit up the breweries, the local breweries, to get their spent grain.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we'll make that grain into compost. And then I'm always foraging around the mountains in the area, up the creek beds. And then we collect the IMOs, the indigenous microbes, and all the old forests, the scrub oak forests. So we collect all over the place and then bring that back and grow it out. And then, yeah, so it's all just mostly local. Once in a while, we'll need minerals. So we'll order, rock dust or different things that we might need, because cannabis is a pretty heavy eater. It eats a lot of food. It needs a lot of nutrition. So yeah, we do a lot of soil testing, and we do plant sap analysis. So we'll take the sap off the plant, and it'll show us kind of what's the plant's eating, and it'll show us the history of what was it eating 6 weeks ago, what is it eating now. So we do this plant sap analysis, and then we cross-reference that with the soil test. Say, okay, the soil was here. Now it looks like the plant ate that much over the last 3 months. Now we have to put, kind of see how our compost is doing. Like I said, because I'm not totally science. Like, I just go for the standard of trying to create a really diverse compost that covers all the nutrients. Okay, because you can't just keep feeding your plants the same thing over and over again. They want diversity, just like
Yeah.
humans want diversity. You have to have some of this, some of that, some of the other, right? Some nitrogen, some phosphorus, and all the micronutrients, selenium and calcium, and all the good things, the building blocks, and boron and molybdenum and all this, right? So basically the way I do that is targeting like grocery store vegetable waste, because all these different vegetables really make a complete diet, right? So I get the whole span of everything, the vegetables, corn, grain. I throw chicken bones in there, as much as I can, diversity. So through that, that's how I feel like I'm covering everything I need. Now, as the plants eat, I will get the soil test and come back and it'll say, okay, you're low in this. So when that happens, if I have to order copper sulfate, I'll order just straight minerals. And they're natural, right? But, it's just like a straight mineral that the soil needs to be balanced. And then we'll top dress with that, and then we'll water it in. And then, next soil test, all right, I'm good to go. So it's just kind of a constant, like, balancing the soil. And when you're growing cannabis in really a high, fast return environment where I'm harvesting 5 times a year, it's a fast moving deal. I mean, I'm constantly adding to the soil, and the plants are eating it down. Then I'm adding compost and alfalfa and, these liquid compost teas and microbial teas. And then I'm, fermented fruit and fermented plants. And then if I need like rock dust, or I need some kind of, if I need some mineral, then I'll add that.
Yeah,
Now,
that's
if you were like
amazing.
doing this outdoors on a regular farm, this would be like once a year. But because I'm harvesting, every 30 days, I'm just like constantly tracking and just like adding it and trying to chase this thing so these plants can just, no delays and no stop, right? Because it's a business. So every day that they're growing is costing rent money, is costing the investors and the owners, money to keep this thing going. So you're trying to optimize as much as possible. Now, kind of what I'm doing out here in Florida, it won't be so intense. It'll be, because it's going to be an outdoor application with trees. So you're checking it out every month. And then, we're doing a test maybe every 3 months the first year, and then maybe once or twice a year, after that, on a 5-acre property with fruit trees and all that.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Like all the thought and effort, the physical effort that is put into that, but it's what will give you the most nutritious, mineral dense, food and cannabis, hemp, whatever. It's amazing, and it's, people don't understand that it could be done so naturally, and how important what you're saying is. I mean, what you're saying and what you're doing for cannabis and for farming in general, like the mission that you have is just so amazing that, I mean, it needs to be spread everywhere. Just thank you for doing this.
It's a lot of, man, it's been a lot of work, and it's not easy out there. It's you get beat up a lot. And cannabis is a fast-paced world where people want to throw money at high-tech, grow operations and all this stuff. And sometimes they don't see the value of taking your time to build the soil correctly. And, because it does take 3 to 6 months to really get this thing cranking to where it's just, kicking out. So those first couple months is just a little bit of a building process, but once you're doing this, you don't buy soil anymore. You don't buy pots. You're just continuously adding the waste streams from the grocery stores and people's waste streams into the system. And then, if they were to track my like downstream, my wastewater, the stuff that goes down the drain, it would be this microbial, biologically rich leachate wastewater that's actually benefiting the ecosystem wherever it goes. Mine goes into the Colorado River, where it's probably just exploding the plant life and helping the fish and all kind of other stuff. And so that to me is like one of the coolest. A lot of companies out there, their wastewater is horrible. They're ditching chemicals and all this stuff. Well, this microbial wastewater is like putting compost tea on everywhere it goes, everywhere downstream is benefiting from me, so it's pretty cool stuff. And I want to kind of, as long as I can, go build these around the world and start creating these little systems and teaching people how to do it.
So is that your plans? What are your plans for the future?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my plans for the future. Right now, I've got a handful of clients that want to do this on their property, and I'm talking to a couple of different cannabis organizations. And so I'm kind of moving on from Colorado and trying to spread this message and get this going different places, and especially for our food supply. So cannabis has been a lot of my story in my life, because I'm a patient. I've had my own health issues. I use it daily. I love cannabis. It helps me operate in my day-to-day life, and I don't have to be on different medications. I love that. And I've helped tens of thousands of people, and I've served cannabis for 25, 30 years. But I've kind of got to this place where the last few years, as I was doing this system, Al, and I was really refining it and bringing in these different experts to help me really refine it, I realized that this should be going on everybody's food and all their medicines. And this should be the same thing that's fed to our livestock so that our livestock can be healthy again, and that we can kind of take back control of what's been broken in our food system and really our health. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I'm kind of at the beginning stages of it. I'm taking a few consulting clients, and I'm kind of dreaming up how this is, the future of it. But I think it's going to include workshops and classes, and possibly, physical products that you can use at your home. And then me helping as much as I can designing projects. I've got somebody who is developing a golf course, and they're interested in having it be all natural, and organic. And, I'm looking at some of these bigger developments and larger farms to kind of go in and help, try to make as much difference as I can.
Right on. That's so awesome. That's beautiful. Well, thank you for coming on the show. We really appreciate you being on here.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad. Really enjoyed your products as well. You're one of my favorite product makers out there. Like I said, I use the product, so I was happy to come on the show for your audience and just support you in what you're doing. And just everybody keep up the good fight out there for natural medicine, and taking responsibility for yourself and your health.
Right on. Awesome. Okay, that concludes this session of Cannabis Friends and 420 Buds. I hope you have a beautiful day.
Peace.